Jason, quando é que eu vou poder divulgar meu cupom no canal do Jason? É só a chance, use o cupom.
Your favorite classic pose.
Last one, gentlemen. Make it a good one. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Back in line. This concludes round one. Back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you, Big Steve. How about a big hand for...
Into that and they get into their head, and it could be a mental tactic. Sometimes, you know, your opponents get into that and they get into their head, and it could be a mental tactic.
It was so social media kind of changed everything. The video, the old classic footage, even when Arnold was competing in the 70s, and some of the guys that came before him in the black and white, and it's changed, but it hasn't changed.
But I will say that no matter what you see on social media, it doesn't compare to what you bring to the day of the stage. That's what matters.
Spoken like a true champion. Yes. All right, let's move on to another competitor, James Hollingshead. Guys, the field, we talked about just making that field of 10 is a big deal. James Hollingshead comes to us by way of London, UK, 5'11", 270. Look at his numbers. He's making his debut here. So, DJ, if you're advising young...
Because I think from what I see that this is James's all-time best. And he's been in situations like this before where he looked great leading up to the show and somehow made whatever mistakes it was, I'm not sure, but he didn't really brought it to the stage. But I have a feeling that we will see the best James, and he's a very dangerous James.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. His condition probably will be second to none, maybe next to Hardy, and he's got that grainy look that all bodybuilders strive for. We all try to look at that grainy, super thin skin, and James is the one bringing that.
Is there any way to prep for this kind of event? I mean, you remember your first time you came here. Did anyone pull you aside and say, hey, Fouad, this is what you can anticipate, this is what it's going to be like this, or was it trial by error?
No, not the first time.
Yeah.
The first time you come here, it's exciting. And you get to meet Arnold, and that's a big deal. And then you're like, okay, there's also a ton of people here, and the stage is bigger, the lighting's bigger, the entire thing. So the bigger stages always kind of put me off a bit. But somebody like James is set up for this, and he's been. I think James, out of everybody in this show, really has something to prove, because James sees himself as a front runner that just hasn't hit his stride yet. And I think he has something to prove and wants to prove to people that he can stand with Hadi, with Samson, with Rafa, with these guys, and he belongs in that top spot. So I'm like Dennis said, I'm really excited to see James step out and see what, because I also believe he's in the best shape of his life. So I'm excited to see him take on the challenge.
So Janet, how do you do that? Go out nervous, big lights, big show. You're nervous as all get out, butterflies, but walk out with confidence.
Gosh, you know, you're talking to someone who competed at the Arnold as their pro debut. And back in the day, I was just like, this is such a prestigious show.
Yeah.
So you're already on nerves. I think it's such just, again, if it's your pro debut, it's you're honored to be here on this platform. But then you have to realize, like, wow, you were invited, because you have to be invited to the show to compete. So you have to hold yourself and give yourself that boost of confidence, knowing that, look, you earned your spot here to compete with the best. So then, you know, every time before I walk on stage, I would always say, all right, shake it off, go out there and own it.
Wow, even you got nervous.
Every single time. To me, if you don't always get a little bit of nervous right before you go on stage, like something's not right.
Someone once said fear is the energy behind doing your best work. And I'm just wondering, when you put in this much work, and you guys have all been there before, and you come out and then even you have said, I'm nervous about this. I'm like, do you ever just say, I put in the work's done, now it's showtime?
I think the guys who know how to harness that fear, and the guys who know how to harness that anxiety, and girls, are the people that get to the top. I always think of Mike Tyson saying about how scared he was walking to the ring. So you have to harness that energy, and then it comes out when it needs to.
It worked out well for him.
Yeah,
most of the time.
little bit.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
DJ, do you ever any walkout ideas, thoughts? I guess the question I would always say, and I look at that stage, and Janet mentioned it, how big the stage is and how it looks just so impressive this year, is when you walk on the stage, where are your eyes? Where are you looking? I mean, you can look at it right there. This is Vegas-esque. This is big time.
It sure is. For me, it was a little different. It all depended on how I looked. When I was in shape, there was no nerves. I just couldn't wait to get out on stage. So it's always until you get backstage and then you take your clothes off, you start pumping up, and then you look in the mirror that's backstage, and then you just confirm. You said, "Oh, is it still okay?" And if you think it's still okay, there's no nerves. And when you look in the mirror, it's like, oh, this must be a bad mirror. Then the nerves will set in just a little bit, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, your job is to get in shape. And when you're in shape, the the level is so high that, you know, you're a little anxious, but, you know, anxious to get on stage and show what you work for so hard.
Yeah. How about Raphael? Let's talk about another athlete that we'll be seeing a bit of. Again, we've got 2 full days of competition and talent like this rolling out there. The young man out of Basil, looking to make a name for himself. I mean, he's got some good placings in the past, but this, you know, we talked about this, DJ. This is the show. If you're going to show up, this is the place to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Raphael we all know Raphael with very, very nice aesthetics, symmetry, everything is spot on. His condition is always great. We always just kind of criticized him for being just a little bit too small next to these guys. So now I know that he said he put on about 10 pounds. So if he can bring 5 to 7 pounds to the stage and has that full look with the same aesthetics and the condition, he's going to be trouble.
Fuad dropped 10 pounds since breakfast this morning. I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. Do you ever get that? I mean, people say, oh, he's too small in comparison to the guys, and it's like, now you got to bulk up. And I've heard that sometimes is even harder than dropping the weight.
We talk about wow factor.
Yeah.
And part of the issue with Raphael, I believe, is he's got such a beautiful shape.
Right.
Part of the reason why it's so beautiful is because it's so aesthetic and so perfectly proportioned. But the other issue is when someone's so perfectly proportioned, a guy might walk next to him with a standout body part, and your eyes are drawn to that person. So that is something that unfortunately doesn't sound like it could be a knock on your physique, but it actually can if everything's too perfectly set up. The other thing is he is 6 feet tall, so he's got a little bit longer look, and that usually takes more muscle to fill out, because weight isn't the whole thing, right? You can say I weigh 260 pounds on stage, but it's how it translates on your physique. So he's just, because his physique is so long, it's like Dennis said, he needs that extra weight to really stand next to somebody like a James Hollingshead, a Samson, a Hottie, because they really packed in that muscle.
And Janet, it's equal for both the men and the women. It's that eye test. When, you know, they get off the bus, it's like they
absolutely
eye test.
A lot of people ask, well, what's your stage weight or what's your goal to weight? And to me, it was never about the weight. I think it's always about that visual, and like you said, Fuad, it's about how does it look on your body. And even our head judges will say, you know, it's not about a certain weight or size. It's about the shape you put on your body, on your structure. And so that's what makes it really neat, that everyone is very individualized on how they stack their muscle and the shape, but one weight doesn't fit all.
Right. Marcelo, another name that we'll be mentioning here as we get ready for the show coming up here in, less than half an hour's time. This young man is impressive. Again, 6'1", 250. This will be his Arnold debut. Fuad, to start with you on this. But you look at the pictures you see him around, he looks like he's ready for the big time.
I am a huge fan of Marcelo. Massive legs, really pretty structure. His knock to this point has just been that condition. He really has to bring the condition to wow the judges. But like I was saying in the last segment, Marcelo has that wow factor.
Yeah.
Those massive legs really draw your eyes, and he's got nice shape. He knows how to pose pretty well. It's really going to come down to condition for him so he can stack up with the other guys.
We talk about stacking weight, and I don't get too deep into the weeds on this, DJ, but when you talk about people stacking weight, is that something that you can, I don't say alter, but you can change? Hey, as Janet was pointed out, you are who you are, your body frame is the way it is. Can you alter that to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, he came back, it looks totally different?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even gaining the weight. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting in real good shape. Once you you bring in all the detail. You can be lighter, but you appear much bigger because the detail is there, and you create way more of an illusion. So it's not always the weight on scale. So nobody gets checked when they check in how much they weigh, unless it's classic physique where they have a weight limit. But in bodybuilding, it's not about how much you weigh. So I was never worried about somebody having 280 pounds, because I've seen guys with 280 pounds and I see guys with 260 or 50 pounds that look bigger than the 280. So it's just a matter of how good of a condition you bring into the stage.
We've talked a lot about some of the favorites that we'll be seeing over the course of the next 2 days. Let's talk about maybe some of the dark horses that could upset or maybe surprise some people. And Janet, I'm going to give you first crack at this young man from Canada before we get to our local Canadian. Antoine is looking pretty good, and he comes in ready to go. Again, another guy making his debut here at the Arnold.
Well, that's amazing. I've actually met him at a gym one time training, and he was so massive in person.
Yeah.
So these guys, I mean, they're very, very huge, but detail, conditioning, and the shape of the muscle, it's all going to come to play. And I'm excited to take a look at what he has to reveal on stage.
DJ, it's not just a Canadian thing, because we know Canadians that are dropping weight, but this guy looks like he is just ripping. That's going to be a constant thing, by the way. We're going to get with it. Losing weight. But he looks like he's really ready to go.
And what I love about Antoine, he went through a lot. And this guy is just like a new. He invented himself. He came back last year at a show that he won.
California.
He won in California. He placed second next to Ian Valliere, where he was at his best, where everybody thought he was done. So I think he has this new motivation, and I've seen updates. I was a little worried about Antoine because I thought that he was lighter and he looked smaller. Then I saw some pictures of him where I said I had to leave a comment on his page. Said, listen, I'm gonna take my thought back because he really impressed me. So I think this is the all-time best. I see him battling.
Yeah.
I see him battling for a top 5 spot.
Fouad, I'm coming to you last because give us the intel on your fellow Canadian brother.
Well, Antoine's a tricky one to judge because he's always had the issue of having amazing legs and being a little bit thinner in the upper body. And this year it looks like he's rounded out his shoulders a little bit more. He looks like he's going to be a little bit thicker, but I still don't know if he's reached the point where he's balanced it out completely. But the thing about Antoine is this. He masks it very, very well. He has a skill in posing to create an illusion to make him look and hide all his weaknesses, which is not something a lot of people can do, right? So, and to top it off, he also brings extreme condition. So when you put those two things together, even though the size may not be there, he could jump ahead a few spots.
You like his chances?
I do. He's really, in the last couple of years, he's really come into his own, is finding his condition, finding like his look.
Last but certainly not least, let's take a look at Jonathan, see what you guys think here. Young man out of Sunrise, Florida, 5'8", goes 240. 2018, finished in 8th in the Arnold Classic. But DJ, he's a good showman. I mean, that's one thing when I think about he's a showman.
Same with John. I mean, John was gone for a while. He had, was it a biceps tear?
Bicep tear.
He tore his biceps. He was gone. Nobody knew if he was going to come back. He was gone at least 2 years, I would say. And next thing you know, you see him come back to the stage, and he looked his all-time best. So now I think him and his coach, Patrick, they work together. I think they kind of found a formula for John. And I'm also expecting John, by looking at his pictures, that he's going to be at his all-time best. That's the bottom line is, I think everybody on that stage tonight will be at their best.
Fellow Floridian, what is it down there on the water? I mean, come in looking like that. Come on.
Yeah, you know, over the past year, I've seen John, and he just putting on the size, and to see him come here and compete is going to be very.
We are here. We are here. Willkommen zurück. Auf der 2024 Arnold live aus Columbus, Ohio. Herzlichen Dank, dass ihr wieder einschaltet. Wunderbare Meisterschaft, Bodybuilding auf absolutem Höchstniveau. Die Pre-Judging-Entscheidungen werden wir jetzt im Finale am Abend reflektiert bekommen. Am steht das Finale
Fitnessklasse, vor allem die Küren und des Weiteren wirklich den totalen Überblick und wird euch näher bringen, weil das Ganze gar nicht unobjektiv ist, wie es so eine Kür wird eigentlich sehr aufwendig. So eine Kür wird eigentlich auch sehr aufwendig erstellt und dann auch bewertet. Wir haben das Finale der Klassikphysikklasse. Happening des Freitags, auf das wir natürlich alle warten. Wir haben einen unglaublichen Vierkampf gesehen, einen zwischen Brian Ensle, Urs Kaliczynski, Wesley Wissers und Ramon. Ja, wir können das mittlerweile auch schon ganz gut synchron. Wir können das mittlerweile auch schon ganz gut synchron. Für mich Best Award, genau. Aber nur Best Award, genau. Physik einzuordnen, das war wirklich ganz großes Kino.
Hast du so erwartet?
Ganz großes Kino. Ich freue mich natürlich extrem, dass Wesley ich freue mich natürlich extrem, dass Wesley bekommt, die er verdient, Recognition Mix drinnen ist und wahrscheinlich und so schaut aus, Mix drinnen ist und wahrscheinlich und so schaut aus, bereit ist, die ersten
I will say, according to the prejudging, Issa and Prince Yellow, they both had amazing.
Also es ist vor allem so, wenn man jetzt Bodybuilding auf allerhöchstem Niveau sieht, dann ist es sehr oft so, vor allem in der offenen Klasse, zu der wir ein bisschen später noch einmal kommen, dass es sehr oft ist, dass der gewinnt, der die wenigsten Fehler macht. Ja? Vor allem in der offenen gewinnt dann der den Peak am besten getroffen hat,